Hello, welcome back. It has not been very long since I see you last. It's been about an hour and a half, in fact. A little bit longer because this was delayed, though. Yeah, I don't know. It just started late, so there's not much in the way of excuses for that. But eventually, they got the vetoes done. What you're going to be watching today is a show match. So it's like a clan war, I guess, right? Where it's not just a best of 5. You know, let's turn the music on. There we go. Wait. I don't think I did that right. I didn't do that right. There we go. Where just one person plays versus another person, and then that score counts. It is instead a best of 5 that has best of 3s in it. So this is a best of 3, and then the next best of 3, and next, and then for the potential ace match, which might happen, that's where it gets to a best of 1, actually, is the format that I've been updated on. So, like, not the most extreme thing you've ever heard, and probably you've definitely heard of a format like this before, but that's the way it's going to be done, so maybe a short cast, depending on how these matches go, but the idea is to kind of highlight not the biggest and the baddest of the players from each region, France and USA, but rather to highlight some of the up-and-comers. There's actually the Underdog tournaments, if you've never watched it. O Gaming runs it, and they do, like, you know, the underdogs or the top dogs type deal. I think we the pleasure of casting that once or twice, I believe. And they brought those guys along for Team France, and then invited a bunch of, a couple of, like, oldies, I guess, from USA, as well as, I guess, some of the new up-and-comers, like JonSnow. So it's a cool little show match idea, and they ran with it. So, gonna be honest, I don't know what the prize is. There wasn't a ton of information to be given on the Team Liquid thread, although there is a Team Liquid thread where you can find the team for Team America. It is Bales, Xena Cider, JonSnow, and Panda Bear Me, and then the finals, I guess, would be a repeat of the team's choice. And then for Team France, it's DnS, Shadone, Uza, Koti, and Denver. Uza Koti is not a right name I recognize, but yeah, that's how it's gonna go. So, also, quickly going over, I guess, the server priority before we do the intros. They did basically, like, flip-flop, so it's going to be a lot of flip-flopping between the regions. For instance, this first best of 3, it goes EU, NA, EU. Next best of 3 is NA, EU, NA, and so on and so forth. Blah, 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 blah. But that's about covered everything about this tournament, so let's get into the actual game. In the bottom right, as the red Protoss, he is DnS for Team France. And in the bottom left, as the Blue Zerg, he is JonSnow for Team USA. Probably a little influenced by the fact the Olympics were going on this time as well. Not that I feel USA and France is like this huge rivalry or something in the Olympics. I can't think of a event where that's like super popular. But USA tends to be pretty conceited about these things, so it might just be that I am not aware of this huge rivalry. Maybe France believes there is one. I don't know. But I'm thinking the idea just came to them. So whatever. The point is to highlight a lot of the new guys and up-and-comers, and this is a great way to do that. So JonSnow actually has not been playing that much recently, so I would definitely give this first best of 3 to DnS, who is a fairly consistent Protoss in a lot of our online cups. And has had certainly a lot of his moments where he actually looks like, yeah, okay, this guy definitely is up and coming. Like, he's actually starting to look really, really solid. And JonSnow also had that for a long time, but as I said, recently not playing as much. And it's going to be a little unfavored here. And he also recently played against Pili, and Pili was able to win that best of 5, I believe 3-0. So that just gives you an idea of JonSnow's time against Protoss, I suppose. Not exactly a great time against Protoss. And thank you for the resubs that happened while, you know, it was downtime, but also just now. So, let's see here. I think I missed Anton Caridian 2 hours ago, resub for 28 months. And then just now, Yegs, resub for 5 months. Thank you very much. Alright, what's happening in this game? It is Frost, horizontal spawn, and a good old-fashioned Roach Ravager all-in is something that I could definitely see go down. Just take advantage of the fact that it's, you know, from this base to this base, because it will be happening as thirds come down. That's a pretty short distance, and those all-ins can still be tricky for Purdosses to hold. But that's all up to JonSnow. He's already turned off the Roach Warren, but doesn't necessarily mean anything quite yet. Although I do feel like this is such a popular build, I'm going to call it, but we'll see. Phoenix opener for DnS. Stargate's over there. There you go. Just a single Stargate. So a couple of Phoenix roaming around, killing overlords, getting some scouting done. And the good news is that if they're on top of scouting, they should, if it is the case of Roach Ravager attacks, see, like, you know, suddenly a lot of Roaches or Ravagers being bulked up and running across the map. And he should have at least some advance notice. Also getting a third base at a very good time. So that should be up and ready to go with pylons set up as well. Especially if he realizes, like, oh, okay, this is a situation where Zergs do have this ability to all-in quite well. Not that they don't have the ability to all-in on any other map or any other spawn position on Frost, but just that this really does favor that quick quick battle. Spore Crawler should be coming down in every base. One's already in the main, one's now down to the third base. None of the natural, just hoping that they never get over there, I suppose. Oh, Overlord does die. I don't think we're using the mods for this, but I'm not sure. Definitely have the BaseTradeTV mod. That is quite a few Roaches, and there's really not a reason to be making them defensively. There are, of course, there's the, oh, Phoenix went down. There's the fear of just, you know, the Adept running across the map, but I feel like that has come and gone. I do feel more this is going to be an aggressive move out, and yes, the Queens have all gathered up, not to take care of the Phoenix, but rather to start their long trek moving across the map. Now, this is a fairly early Roach all-in. 44 drones is not bad, but of course there's no layer, there's no Roach speed, not even waiting for the Ravagers. Oh, there he goes. Now he's waiting for the Ravagers. But this has started, and DnS does not quite have a lot of pylons. Now putting on extra ones as he realizes this is going to be quite committed. Didn't really go that deep on the Phoenix count either, by the way, so he very quickly transferred over into double Robo, but maybe not quick enough. A pylon already goes down. This one's not going to do very much at all. Not going to bother overcharging it either. Other one's still available, and there is one back here powering in case these go down. That's very important. Phoenixes aren't going to be that helpful in the first place, but especially with the Queens coming in here, Mothership requires to be very careful. One extra overcharge is really, really good to have. 2 extra is sometimes exactly what you need, but more importantly, waiting for these Immortals to pop out. They have a lot of, I mean, like, they have health, right? But that's the fact that they live for so long with the shields. And, of course, they do counter the Roaches on the front lines and still pack a punch against everything else that is available for JonSnow here. The DnS is getting a little bit cornered. The Stalker's starting to go down, but so are the Queens. Transfuses are almost run out. It's not quite. Got, like, I think 4 more. And, of course, production is just there. It's just really not there for DnS. He's banking so many minerals, but didn't get to those extra gateways quite yet. His Robo is depowered, and JonSnow might have just done it. I mean, it was a very, very good thing to do in these locations, and DnS maybe a little bit surprised by it. Not necessarily by the idea of a really committed attack, but by how fast it came. You know, he was almost prepared. He was probably getting, like, mentally ready, like, okay, I gotta put my gateways down soon, and then the attack happened, so he, you know, forgot, because if you start him at the beginning of the attack where the Ravagers are, like, you know, forming in, they will finish maybe in time to help you out, but unfortunately didn't have those gateways even started, I do believe. Like I said, a lot of server hopping's gonna go on, so it's gonna lengthen the downtime a little bit between games. Hopefully not too much. The map veto's already been done, so we do know the map order. Frost, Galactic, into New Gettysburg. Should go to the third map. Each best of 3 win gets 1 point for the respective teams. And I guess the best way to do that, maybe just title T this. USA 0, 0. since there's not a really easy way to do this elsewhere. That works. Sure. Oh boy. If you can't tell, but I'm sure you can, I'm a little bit tired. I tried to take a nap and then, it wasn't the greatest nap in the world. I was actually surprised I was that awake for the finals this morning because I had a terrible time sleeping. I didn't eat for like 8 hours because I planned on having something at night because I had like this really big lunch, and then I just ended up doing other stuff. So I actually couldn't sleep because I was so hungry. But you know, you already like brush your teeth, so I didn't really want to eat after that and then go to bed like with the feeling of food in my mouth. I don't know, maybe that's weird. But so I couldn't go to sleep because I was hungry. And I finally went to sleep. Of course, cats started doing their cat things, like pawing at plastic and opening the door really wide and just being butts. So it's starting to hit me a little bit. Also, the Red Bull probably is coming crashing down now. Oh boy. Where's the invite, buddy? If I was making the lobbies, it'd be done by now. Not even for Schnigen. Alright. The order of the matches, by the way, was kept secret from each other, so you know, these aren't pre-planned, I guess. It's not like, you know, they've known who their opponent is for a week. They know who maybe their opponent is for, you know, a couple of weeks, or week and a half, 2 weeks. You know, they know who's on the other team, but they didn't know who's facing who, so I think they come online, they're like, hey, you're facing Xenocider, or something like that, and then they have to kind of work their way around that. So unfortunately, while I think there is a set list, it's not like they're just sending out people in like a King of the Hill type format. It is more like Pro League. It's not that much advance notice. Oh, okay. Apparently Galactic Process won't show up. Huh. France hates Galactic Process. Well, I'm getting the spinny wheel of death. Try changing your filters. My filter is Blizzard Maps, Ladder Maps. I can't change that filter, you piece of... Oh, that worked. DnS, JonSnow, JonSnow. Oof. Wah. Tomorrow, I'll be back with a co-caster this time. Fear Dragon should be back unless he's stuck in forever hell at the airport. I'll be back to co-cast the Corsair Cup. And then the Alima League starts an hour earlier than normal on Tuesdays now. To accommodate a couple of things on their side, but the point is, it is the monthly finals for the Alima League this Tuesday morning for most people, I guess, except the Koreans. And that should be exciting. We're gonna see Byen again, of course, and everyone else who got enough points throughout the month. But then after that, I think we're casting something else. It's yet to be confirmed, I believe. So I guess I'll hold on that now. But Fear Dragon should be helping with the Alima League, and then maybe Rifkin will be back. The current plan right now, actually, by the way... complicated copy-pasting, stupid thing. There we go. The current plan, by the way, is to have Fear Dragon at the very least solo cast the DreamHack Montreal second stream, community stream, while I'm in Montreal. Literally, I'm going to Montreal for the event. But maybe Rifkin will come to co-cast that, depending on how he feels as the week continues. We're now just waiting on a roomie to download the map. Apparently, it's having a bit of trouble. Did I miss a sub shoutout? Yes, during the game, that's right. Iveson resub for 6 months, and First Person Swede resub for 24 months. Thank you very much. Alright. Checking if the other casters are ready. I'm not missing anyone. I don't think so. The players are ready. Thanks to Mescon for the 8-month resub. Says Sweden. Sweden. I'm not sure what to do with that. Oh, let's get in the game. Galactic Process. A map that originally I thought was going to, I think a lot of people thought anyway, was going to dominate the map choices as it was so akin to an old standard Cloud Kingdom, and for the most part it has no glaring balance, you know, problems for one race or the other. Has actually come to be a very rarely chosen map, which is quite odd. Because it's not that every other map is better, so this one's kind of pushed to the side, it's just that I mean, maybe that is actually the case. I just don't know what's wrong with Galactic Process, and some pro gamers are gonna come in here like, well, actually, because X or Y is totally imbo for Brodos, or I don't know, right? But it seems to be that just it's kind of pushed aside as people have specific plans for other maps, and this one just doesn't really tailor. So to see it here in the second game is what I would expect if it wasn't for this past couple of days where everyone was choosing everything else. Like, dang. Anyways, in the top right, no, he is not up one. He is down one. It is the red Protoss DnS. In the bottom left, as the blue Zerg, he is Flipside Tactics JonSnow. Apparently has learned some French to speak to his opponent here. Gateway is going to diagonally help wall off, I suppose. We do see a lot of Protosses actually walling off here, as risky as that can be. Or at least eventually walling off, I suppose, like with their other gateways that come down afterwards. And I think that's going to happen, because there's really... I feel like there's not really a reason not to later on. Like, maybe you argue, and definitely this could be argued, that you don't put the first pylon over here because the gateways... You know, if there is an early pool, maybe it gets torn down so far away from any probe help or anything like that, that's not worth it. But, you know, you do this, or you wall up here, and then you wall down here. I think there's no reason not to, because eventually these rocks are broken down as you take this third base, and that only lets one avenue of attack, ideally, for the Zerg, and Zerg's all about attacking multiple paths, so reducing any of that is usually pretty good for the Protoss. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. DnS did just lose to a all-in, so, you know, I was gonna be a little bit paranoid about that. Even if it's an entirely different map and a pretty different scenario because of the map. Like, Frost Horse Almost Spawn is one of those things where I feel like if you're on ladder, like, oh, well, I might as well try and do this build that I've been practicing. So in tournaments, it's like, well, I might as well try and use this to the best of my advantage, which is oftentimes with some type of all-in. But for Galactic Process, it's much more of a standard map. It's actually not, it's not the biggest map, but it's not the smallest map either, because it has a couple of twists and turns and multiple pathways that can be open and close, you know, depending on how you wall off. It does create kind of like this middle of the road, like, okay, it's not really powerful for all-ins. I'm guessing you still can. You can all-in technically whenever you want, but, when did they put that in? I don't understand. Oh my god. But anyway, to finish my point before I go on about the referee thing. So some people break down these rocks and attack into the third base like this with an all-in. But anyways, the hotkey issue, whatever that, you know, DnS just talked about, I guess recently they put it so that if there's a referee in the lobby, they're the only ones that can unpause. When originally it was they're the only ones that can pause and unpause along with the players. So I don't know why they changed that. And I wonder if it shows up if there's not a referee. Out of habit, I probably made myself referee and I didn't even notice, but I've yet to experiment with any other combination of spectators, so I don't appreciate it. Stargate opener coming out here. We do not have the attempted wall off at the front. They just put in DnS putting his gateways back here. Spore Coil is already coming down for JonSnow. She shouldn't take any damage from this Oracle. And the game does just continue in a macro sense. And, you know, as I said, JonSnow could throw out another all-in. Fine, that's great. Bring one of these rocks or try and force your way up this ramp. They don't usually suggest it, but you could try it. But I also think this is a perfectly fine map to try and macro. Jesus, cats just jumped through the door. Scared the Jesus out of me. Chasing each other. Idiots. Idiots! You made me look bad. Anyways, the Bailey Nest on the way. Ooh. Not just a different map for a different type of game, but for a different composition in the game as well, I suppose. Trying out Ling Baneling. Very tricky, I think, for a lot of Protosses, to be honest. There are some Protosses who still have trouble against Roach Ravager all-ins for sure. DnS had trouble last game. But for the most part, that's been the standard for a very long time, so you know, they're kind of comfortable with that idea of Roaches into Hydras, into Lurkers, and whatnot. But despite what has been now a couple of months of Baneling usage being very, very popular, it's still arguably like, new. Before these past few months, the last time you saw Banelings versus Protoss was either with, you know, a pro gamer that just was odd every once in a while, or Wings of Liberty. You know, back when, like, Leenock was actually doing really well. Like, Leenock versus Naniwa was all about Baneling. So it's been a long period of time where Protosses didn't have to worry about that. So a lot of Protosses are still adapting, and there are still a lot of, I think, timings and styles that they're having trouble with and not quite well prepared against. But these Adepts are coming in, and Banelings can be used offensively. They can also be used quite well defensively. The Oracles, I think they wanted to target fire the Banelings, end up target firing the Queens, and they do quite a bit of damage, but one goes down. The other Banelings deal an okay amount of splash damage to the Adepts, but more importantly, there was enough Lings to take care of this. So that really didn't do a whole lot. Direct damage, indirectly, it forced all those Lings, so JonSnow very quickly has to remake, or continue to make drones. So he's made, I think, about like 20 now, and is going up to that point of comfortable drone count, so 60 plus is usually pretty good. And he can start his Hydra's production. We'll see if JonSnow commits to Centrifugal Hooks or not, but ooh, the sentries miss the force field and go down. 2 sentries down, especially when you think there might be Banelings in the future, is pretty big deal. Do have Blink on the way with +1. Seems to be that this is, you know, some people still go a lot of Adepts, some people still really prefer Blink. It's kind of understood that going for a lot of Adepts against someone who has Banelings is always going to be risky. You know, it's very obvious. Even with really good force fields and really good splits, it can still, you know, be too many Banelings. But Blink Stalkers, you know, they're a little bit more durable. They can Blink micro splits as well as chase and run away, ideally, behind or in front of, you know, those force fields. It is something that if you see they're going to go Baneling style, you might want to consider changing your mind from Adept to Blink, but it's also a style thing, so. Because yeah, we do see some Protosses just, you know, they see Banelings, they see like 50 Banelings, and they're like, ah, I'll just work with more Adepts. That'll work. But it's not more Banelings yet, so I'm talking all about Banelings, but the Hydralisks are now on the way out. And Hydra Ling is like this pretty... Hydras are always going to be a little expensive, but when you consider that they could be turning into Lurkers, or the Lings could be turning into Banelings, it's relatively low cost. But there is the Lurker Den, and there is centrifugal hooks, so it is going to be a pretty powerful army, certainly with a lot of, like, burst potential, but also one that is very expensive, and if it's used incorrectly, can be hard to replace. You lose the Lurkers, the Banelings, you know, run into force fields and start derping around. That's pretty expensive losses right there. The DNS is pushing forward with a Blink Stalker attack. He does have a saturation all set up ready to go on all 3 bases. Has an upgrade as well as just a lot of Blink Stalkers, but, you know, JonSnow very quickly got to a good drone count, has been producing nothing but army for some time. He could have had a concave on the bottom of the ramp, and still does have the opportunity to do that. There's really not that many force fields for DNS to use, so he's got to be careful not to push forward too much. And he doesn't know when Baneling speed will finish, or if Baneling speed, you know, is even on the way. Seeing Banelings being made, probably gonna guess there is, but always gotta be careful. Seriously, that's not a lot of force fields if he's gonna push down into what is a concave over here. So JonSnow is also being very careful not to push into potential force fields up here, or God forbid, on the ramp. But it's a very scary situation right here, as his army isn't quite beefed up enough. DNS really does have a lot of potential with the amount of warp-ins he can get, as well as, you know, bigger and better units being on the way with disruptors. But there's JonSnow's bigger and better units. Lurkers are on the way. Speed has finished for the Banelings, and he is now ready to go in terms of defending against his 4th base, but also in terms of providing a little bit of pressure. With this army, he could, I think, yeah, go out in the map and start looking for the army fight, or looking for a good position around DNS's 4th, or maybe even 3rd. These rocks still not broken down, so maybe not on the JonSnow's priority, but if they ever are, Ling counterattacks, run-bys rather, while attacking into the 4th base could be quite good. Disruptors are here. There's not that many of them. I really consider that DNS has been making a lot of Blink Stalkers. Wasn't the quickest 2 robotic spay I've ever seen. Only gets 2 Lurkers for 2 Disruptors. That's actually not a bad trade if there was more than 2 Disruptors, but that is all of DNS's splash on cooldown for some time until he gets more. Banelings are always going to be scary, you know, those Zealots are going to go really quickly, especially when they have charge, and just run into the Banelings. Hydras are at a lot of that DPS, and this is a now scary position for DNS to try and defend his 4th. Detonation forced to go off from one of those Disruptors doesn't really do a whole lot. This one, not exactly the greatest either, and the Banelings do collide into the Zealots, but not enough of them to instantly KO all the Zealots, but eventually they do go down. More warped in here, but now the Lurkers are advancing as well, and DNS is getting forced back on top of a ramp. So that's where Lurkers really look quite good. Disruptors just miss every single Lurker because he doesn't know where they are. There's no detection here. He's just guessing. And the 4th base goes down. That could sometimes not be the biggest deal, but if you lose your army and the 3rd base goes down, that is a big deal. And DNS did try and save it and lost a good chunk of his army. Disruptors going down now too. A couple good force fields at the end of this to try and save it. Also take a couple of Hydras down. Not so bad, but only after losing so much. Hive on the way now for JonSnow. 5th base on the way. Spire is available for him, so he could go into a greater Spire very easily. There was a really epic game between, I think, JonSnow and Peely on this map, where JonSnow over-dedicated to very expensive late-game units, and was actually beat back despite a good position like this. But DNS is barely holding on, and it would be that epic comeback. Had to be a very epic comeback to help him out here versus Broodlords, if it gets to that point. I don't know if he can do it. Charging in once again, Hydras just micro back. A couple of the Lurkers now going down, and the Observer is here to help take care of them. At the very least, show the Disruptors where they are, so they're now trying to get those correct hits. An army going into that 3rd base, and once those gateways go down, that's a lot of production, but also that's where the probe line opens up, and DNS definitely needs to keep his 3rd base alive. Blinks forward to take care of the rest of the Hydras, and JonSnow did just lose most of his army on the front line. 2 Lurkers survive, and they're waddling back. But JonSnow needs to consolidate, calm down a little bit, and get to that greater Spire. We have Archons now for DNS coming out. He could probably plant, yeah, he's planting on his 4th base again. And he was able to hold on 3 bases. He didn't get to a 4th. I can see him getting maxed out, and you can do a lot of things with a maxed out army. Especially the Blink Stalkers get into a good position against the Broodlords, or you attack before the Broodlords are ready, which seems to be DNS's plan here. A bunch of back and forth. But JonSnow still has a couple of lurkers, still has a large Hydra army, and that can buy a lot of time. Worst case scenario, ooh, that was a good hit. Worst case scenario, give up the 5th base for now. Come back later when you have that advanced tech. That might just be the case here. DNS, though, very hesitant to push in. Doesn't quite know how many lurkers are back there. Oh, JonSnow definitely shouldn't push into the army. That's for sure. 4th base just about finished up, so finally those probes can stop long-distance mining. But this base isn't going down. I guess the gases are. But JonSnow is about to have Broodlords. That Greater Spire is finishing. The Corruptors have already been made. Warprism drops off a couple of Zealots in the 3rd base and in the main base. Could go, I mean, ideally for the Greater Spire, to be honest. But the Broodlords are already in production. Disruptor Shot's going down, killing a couple of the Lurkers. And it's actually not a very big army whatsoever. And JonSnow, he's in a very, very difficult position. His army's not actually paying attention. They're not killing the Zealots, and the Zealots are killing a lot of drones, and his army is so... I mean, Hydras are so weak, Lurkers left alone can die very, very quickly, and quickly, JonSnow's supply plummets. He does have those Broodlords, and there's not a ton of Blink Stalkers. That army's more about those fat Archons, but if those Broodlords advance too far forward, there's not enough of them to protect each other, and Blink Stalkers could definitely get the kills. More Broodlords on the way. He's trying to get those Lings in the front lines. Disruptor's looking for pretty good hits. Gets about 3 Hydralisks. The blink forward goes down on those Broodlords. I think this is just gonna do it for DNS. If there was Lurkers here, if there was a maxed out army, if there was 15 Broodlords instead of 4, I don't think DNS can push up that ramp. But he does. And that's going to send us into the ace match of this specific best of 3. So no points on the board yet for either team. And we'll take a quick commercial break. So thanks for watching. This is the USA versus Underdogs show match set up with O Gaming. And we're going to go to EU as well. And hope you enjoy this little show match. See you in a bit. Welcome back. Didn't miss much, just swapping servers and getting to the lobby. I see this a lot, and I wonder if people just don't know that you can get specifically to ladder maps to ensure that they're Blizzard approved and they have the little LE or whatever next to it. That means Blizzard checked it and it doesn't have like randomly long-range spine crawlers. Because I see a lot of other hosts of lobbies just, I guess, type, for instance, New Gettysburg and get things like the Pro League New Gettysburg or like official New Gettysburg or whatever. And it's so easy. It's so easy, guys. I got this like lobby making elitism going on. Anywho, New Gettysburg is the last map in this PvZ. Currently tied up. In the bottom left, as the blue Protoss, he is DNS for Team France. Team Underdogs. In the bottom right, as the red Zerg, he is JonSnow for Team USA. I mean, I can take a lot of guesses as to why USA is the only country that seems to chant its country's name all the time. So that, you know, it's a given now. It's not something that's like fanatic. You know, I guess you can go along with it. It's been around for a long time, and there's a lot of like, there maybe even be too much American pride, but I also think it's just really like, it's a lot easier to say. You know, it's an acronym as opposed to an actual title. No one's shouting, United States of America, United States of America. That's too long. That's too long. It's either America, barely with the A, or you're chanting USA. I think it's easier. Anyway. You start to really think about, you know, hometown pride when the Olympics are on, totally. Because I've totally been watching the Olympics. You can't question me on that. I've watched so many Olympics, you don't even know. Someone that lives nearish to me won shooting. I know things. Anyway. The whole purpose of this, if you're just tuning in, is to just get attention and, you know, eyes on and knowledge about up-and-comers for both regions. So O Gaming does the Underdogs tournament and eventually does the Top Dogs tournament too, to have the up-and-comers against the established pros. And they decided to have, you know, France vs. USA Showmatch also showcase a couple of the USA pro gamers, American pro gamers. And those pro gamers are Bales, Unisetter, JonSnow, Panda Bear Me, and for France, DnS, Shadone, Uzakoti, and Denver. Most of those names recognizable, of course. Some in some ways. Some, I guess, not. I mean, you know, looking at the player list for Team USA here, Bales, okay, Panda Bear Me, okay, JonSnow, okay, Xenocider, that's interesting. Like, isn't that guy kind of retired? I'm actually not even, I can't even tell you if he is or not, to be honest. He streams, he comes back, he has an interest in StarCraft, but it's never as much as it was once upon a time when he was the next foreign Terran hope, you know? And a lot of that, I'm guessing, is because he's, you know, focusing on his studies and whatnot. So many North American players, and this is, like, one of the main problems, are doing something else. They have full-time jobs or part-time jobs at the very least, or they go to school, so it's always hard to schedule around them, and they always have to consider taking time off for like longer events and stuff like that, when it doesn't seem to be the case quite as much for the Europeans, and definitely not for the Koreans, who've already given up a good chunk of their life by going into team houses. And it is it's Sunday, right? It is a Sunday. I guess that's not really a concern for most of these guys, so it's a perfect time tournament. A little unfortunate that you have to swap between regions, but, you know, it's, at least trying to make it as fair as possible, swapping every single game this way, that way, this way, that way. Each best of 3 is, opportunity to play on each server. There's not much going on in this game, really. 3 hatch. You know, macro versus what is another Stargate opener from DnS. Seems like a Stargate openers, whether it's Oracle or Phoenix. Another Oracle one on this map like the last. And should not be getting too much done because JonSnow's already scouted everything and has Spore Colors on the way. The Adept shade-in that happened last game was decent enough, but even harder, I think, to accomplish when you are mostly going through this little bridge. So I don't know if he's going to try and pair up with the 2 Oracles again. That would be hopeful, I guess the right word. Layers on the way for JonSnow, and no Baneling Nest in sight quite yet. Maybe because he figures, like, hey, that was pretty quick third base, I don't think you're really gonna, you know, I don't have to worry so much about being attacked. And honestly, the Baneling Nest last game, defensively, was unnecessary. He had enough Lings and Queens to deal with everything fine, so might be thinking along those lines. Or might just be holding off on it until later. Who knows? We can't say for sure until we see what he throws down with this lair. What's interesting, though, is it really is a bare bones lair. Like, there's not even an evolution chamber. There we go, now going down for, like, +1 melee or carapace. But there's the Adept attack that happened last game, and there aren't any Banelings to wait for, as I was talking about, but last game there were so many Lings, didn't matter. Is that going to be the case again here? The Queens are already in position, so I think, yeah, DnS realizes this isn't really going to work out, but he forces out Lings at the very least. Very quickly, JonSnow realizes that's not going to be committed to as he watches the Oracles retreat, watches the Shades retreat, and immediately gets back to droning, even quicker than he did last game. Hydrogen is thrown down, and maybe he really saw that last game as a waste of Banelings in general. Defensively, they weren't that useful. Offensively, they weren't really just the oh my god, this is the reason he's going to win. You know, they got decent hits at best against a couple of Zealots. But that also could be argued, like, he didn't go enough Banelings. You know, you see Banelings in the counts of, like, 40 or 50 from, like, Snoot sometimes, and that's enough Banelings. That's when they really look quite good, but I think he only ever got, like, not even up to 20, I want to say, if I had to take a guess. So, they weren't destined for greatness after all. But I will put him at just Ling Hydra for quite a long time. And he is upgrading the Hydralisk before going for the Lurker Den, so no timing on the Lurkers, which DnS would probably like to scout. That's going pretty deep, though, for the Oracles, which are already a little bit injured. Revelation should be able to be cast by there, though. Oh, no, he goes for the attack instead. Oh, almost loses one of the Oracles. As long as you don't lose both, it's not that much of a problem, I guess. One still available for Revelation, but I mean, ideally, you never lose a unit in the entire game of StarCraft. That would be the ideal StarCraft game. Awkward slow warp in is awkward. There is the Baneley Nest, but also a very... You know, he got a Spire, I think, fairly quick last game. He had it before the Hive was done, for instance, or even halfway done. But this one's even quicker, and paired up with everything else going on, I think is quite an investment. This is a lot of investment towards the future, and DNS is pushing right here, right now. So whatever's coming from that Spire probably won't be that helpful initially. JonSnow's not making enough minerals and gas to go for a Muta swap. The Baneling Nest might finish, but it'll be slow Banelings if it makes any at all. At least I guess the upgrade will be done. And he is building nothing but Hydras and Lings right now. So he's not getting caught off guard droning and being too greedy necessarily. But the tech going down right now is maybe a little late. DNS gets in there, scouts a fairly, you know, well-rounded army and good-sized army, and you know, is going to try a different approach here. But that's, I think, a good Protoss army to take on what JonSnow has. Banelings are done, but again, slow Banelings. No lurkers in sight, no lurker den in sight either. Force fields are not the greatest, gonna be honest, but they do save most of the sentries, so hey, job well done at the end of the day if it wasn't the cleanest thing in the world. Blink forward also a little bit questionable, but there aren't any Lings to cover these Hydralisks, so it does work out. And that fourth base is gonna go down, and JonSnow just didn't have enough to take on this attack. Last game he did. Last game he was pumping out just enough units with just the right positioning down that ramp to make it A-okay. This game not so much, but he's already in a pretty bad position. DNS gets a fourth base behind this. Has +2 being chroned out here, so his Blinkstalker is going to be very effective, believe it or not, against these Hydralisk. And all he has to do is worry about not taking Baneling hits to the face, which even if he did, the Stalkers can take quite a few hits. He's going to play a little bit safe. Surprising after such an aggressive blink forward, but not going to try and tango up a ramp, I suppose, under the third base. Probably should have checked for the fourth. That would have been a cancel, but, you know, whatever. He does have his macro going along strong, and he is getting ahead in other ways than just literally ending the game. The Mutas coming out is... I don't know. If you're going to go for a Muta swap, it's usually a lot better to just recognize when you can wait to bank a lot, and then, you know, come out full force, like with 12 right off the bat, and then very quickly after that, 4, 5, 6 more. And that's when suddenly, you know, if they don't expect it, they're screwed. If you send 9 Mutas across the map, and they don't expect it, that's minimal damage, and maybe it still snowballs, but also maybe they have a Stargate, and they start building Phoenixes, and they have Blink, and they start sending Blink Stalkers around, and it's not the same type of surprise factor, you know? But it looks like JonSnow is going to try and commit entirely to Mutas, so this also could have been a situation where he just got Mutas to take care of War Prisms and do the littlest, tiniest bit of harassment possible. But going up to about 15 and an upgrade for them, I think he's going to try and go for Muta style. And DNS did recognize this. Is getting 1 Phoenix at a time, not the greatest thing in the world, but it's also attacking with Blink Stalkers, so the Mutas are going to have to make a decision. They're really not in high enough numbers to, I think, force a base trade, and I'm surprised DNS is pulling back right here, but I guess he's afraid that this is, like, you know, the start of the Mutalisks, which technically it is, but more like there's 20 Mutalisks coming up behind it, and he needs to take this seriously. There's not. There's 3 and 2 at a time coming in here, not too scary. And really, seriously, like, the fact that DNS went for Blink Stalkers has already set him up a lot better than some other Protosses you see. Get blinded by Spire transition. There are some, you know, we watched actually yesterday for the semifinals, Patience just go entirely Adept, and then he went into a lot of Immortals, which is a great army in general, but not against a Meals transition, and he just had to tap out because he really had nothing that shot air. By already having upgraded Blink Stalkers, that's already something. A lot more something. But also, Phoenixes are the kind of end-all be-all to the Muta tech. I think JonSnow is done building Mutas. He went up to 16. Kind of an okay amount, but is now going back into Lurker Den. His army is of equal army supply, but it is very fragile. Oh no, oh god. So is a Protoss army if you try and disruptor it, like god. God. Disruptors do friendly fire, but just not onto other disruptors. If you didn't know, so it's always scary when that kind of thing happens. Colossus is an interesting addition. They do have consistent damage, not the burstiest of damage, especially in Legacy of the Void, but consistent, and against all these light units can be very, very useful. Force fields come down to protect the Stalkers from the Banelings. The Banelings go down without doing too much. I guess a lot of them did kill the probes, but on 4 bases, DNS could easily replace 19 probes. Hell, he's even going to start transferring probes, too. And I don't think that was devastating. Losing the base might have been worse, but even then, DNS had a very good army fight and has a very good army. So just by being up 20 army supply with this, like, grand, almost Death Bally army is what's super scary for JonSnow now. Consider that he has a couple of, not exactly useless supply, but not the best supply in his army, and a direct engagement with this army I don't think is going to go that well. Corruptors can kind of try and take out the Colossus. I guess Mutas technically can too, but they should just die to the upgraded Stalkers. And the Hydras will melt very quickly. Oh, wrong button. There we go. Ultimate zoom out. Colossus should, at the very least, if they don't take care of the Hydralisk, take care of the Banelings first. And then they'll, even if they die, I think that's a job well done for them. DTs are now coming in. Warp Prism are going to reinforce this gigantic army. It's maxed out, but eventually it'll take a trade. Not sure where the DTs came in, to be honest. But, oh god, he gets on top of that ramp, and the Mutas aren't... Mutas Corruptors aren't taking care of the Colossus. There we go. The Corruptors are now going to top of the Phoenix. Shortly afterwards, the Colossus. Not really a lot of blinking going on either, but there we go. Blinks back. Charge Lot's being warped in, and the Hydralisk really can't stand up against the rest of that army. DTs are now coming in. I guess they just were warped another side of the map, so they walk across and start killing quite a few drones. Banelings could manly detonate on top of this thing. And probably should before it starts killing even more drones. But this looks like game over for JonSnow. DNS brings it back 2-1 for France, for the underdogs. And I don't know how he's going to come back from this. The supplies really don't look that bad. 31 drones is obviously very, very terrible, but, you know, if this was a Terran army at 92 army supply with decent upgrades and, like, Liberators, you're like, oh, okay, maybe something can happen here. But the greatest thing JonSnow is going for him is, like, a lot of Corruptors that could probably snipe the Warp Prism and whatever Colossus left over, only one apparently. But that's, like... That's still not enough. Archons, Charge Lots, Stalkers are all going to be able to take on the rest of the ground army, I do believe, so... GG! JonSnow does lose to DNS. Next up, I think we already have the match determined. It is Xenocider versus... Denver. Which I really only remember because Riffian always talks about Denver, the Last Dinosaur, or whatever, okay. Looks like all the games we played on EU, because Xenocider asked to play on EU? That's odd. I'm pretty sure he's not in Europe right now. Maybe he doesn't have that bad a ping, doesn't mind. But that's cool, it means there's no hopping in between, and maybe it'll go a little bit faster when it comes to downtime. But as we do get the map set up, I'm going to take a quick break. See you guys in 2 minutes.